Dear students, last time we discussed about various ecological factors or ecofactors, but today we shall be taking on one by one some of the important ecological factors which play an important role in the presence or absence of the organisms from a particular environment. Dear students, before proceeding, it is a request to you all to like and subscribe my channel. So today we shall be taking on the light. When we talk about the light, we say light is visible range of electromagnetic spectrum. When we say electromagnetic spectrum, we say that it is the complete range of oscillating waves that travel together through the space at the speed of about 3 lakh km per second. So, light is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And when we say light, it is the visible range of the electromagnetic spectrum. And what is electromagnetic spectrum? It is a complete range of oscillating waves that travel together through the space at a speed of about 3 lakh km per second. This very electromagnetic spectrum originates from the sun, and that is why it is called as the solar radiation. And 83 kilometers above, that is from the surface of the earth, the solar radiation carries an energy that is 2 calories per square centimeter per minute, and this value is called as the solar constant. So when we say that what is solar constant, you may say that at about 83 kilometers above the surface of the earth, the solar radiation, which falls at the rate of about 2 calories per square centimeter per minute, and this is called as the solar constant. So light is visible range and it is a part of electromagnetic spectrum, and this really electromagnetic spectrum is the range of the oscillating waves which travels together through the space at a speed of about 3 lakh km per second. When we talk about the solar radiation, now we have this one more thing, that is a solar radiation. What solar radiation is? Solar radiation consists of the short wave radiations, light and long wave radiations. So it has short wave radiation, it has light radiation, and it has long wave radiations. Or light radiations, we also call it as the visible radiation. Short wave radiations, they are cosmic rays which have the wavelength less than 10 raised to power 5 nanometer. So short waves having the wavelength of less than 10 raised to power minus 5 nanometer. And we do have the gamma rays which have the wavelength from 10 raised to minus 3 to 10 raised to minus 5 nanometer. Then we do have the X-rays which have the wavelength of X-rays having the wavelength of about 10 raised to minus 1 to 10 raised to minus 2 nanometer. Then we do have the ultraviolet rays. We call it as the UV rays, that is 100 to 400 nanometer. So we do have the short waves having more than 10 to 5 nanometer, we do have the gamma rays 10 to minus 3 to 10 to 5 nanometer of the wavelength. We do have the X-rays 10 to minus 1 to 10 to minus 2 you can say nanometer wavelength. Ultraviolet rays 100 to 400 nanometer wavelength. So all short waves are extremely harmful. Most of them are trapped in the ionosphere and mesosphere. Then we do have the ultraviolet rays that are also harmful. Then we do have the light or the visible spectrum. So we do have this very spectrum, that is the visible spectrum. So these are from this side to this side. We do have the radio waves towards this side. Here it is depicted as the gamma rays having the shorter wavelengths, and we do have the toward the shorter wavelength we do have the higher frequency. So toward the shorter wavelength we do have the higher frequency, toward the longer wavelength we do have the shorter frequency. So we do have this is the visible range. This is the portion which is called as the visible range. This small portion is visible range. Visible range is it is from 400 to 700, you can say a nanometer. 400 to 700 nanometer. Many times the question is asked in examination in micrometer or in angstrom. So you have to keep in mind that the visible or the light spectrum has a wavelength of about 400 to 700 nanometer, or you can say 0.4 to 0.7 micrometer, or you can say 4000 to 7000 angstrom. So it is one and the same thing. So you have that at this very light performs the photosynthesis. So this is the visible range, which is that is the light wherein the plants take use of it and they perform the photosynthesis, and hence this is also called as the photosynthetically active radiation. We also know it by the name of the PAR, PAR, that is photosynthetically active radiation. And secondly, you should also be knowing that the infrared radiations, they are the heat radiations with wavelength 740 nanometers to 10 raised to power 6 nanometer. So here in this very diagram you are able to see that towards this very side you are seeing the radio waves, toward this very side you are seeing the gamma rays. So this is the visible range. So then it is the infrared radiation, then it is the microwave, then it is these are the radio waves. So this is towards the longer wavelength and the lower frequency. And when we move on to this very side, that is toward the, then after visible we do have the ultraviolet radiation, we do have the soft x-rays, we do have the hard x-rays, and then we do have the gamma rays. So this is the higher frequency but shorter wavelength. So X-rays, gamma rays, they have the shorter wavelength but higher frequency, whereas when we move towards the radio waves, they do have the longer wavelength but shorter, you can say, frequency. Secondly, now how this light plays an important role and has its effect on the animals. In this very lecture we shall be dealing with its effect on animals, and in the next lecture we shall be dealing with the effect of the light on the plants. So first of all we shall be dealing with the effect of light on the animals, but before we should be knowing that the animals depend on the light for orientation, diurnal migration, and synchrony of the rhythmic activities. And the light reception probably is the most important sensory modality in the explanation of the environment. And when we say that about the light, that it is not surprising that there are certain receptors which are used for the for the light, and they are commonly present in all the animals in the form of the eyes, in the form of the, you can say, receptors as the light receptors. So there are certain animals where in these very receptors they are well developed, and we call such receptors as the photoreceptors. And the light greatly influences the behavior as well. Light receptors may be well defined in the well-defined organs such as the vertebrate eyes. Vertebrates have the well-developed eyes which receive the light, and some have the compound eyes such as crustacea and insects. They do have the compound eyes, and whereas in some other organisms the eyes can be simple, such as they may be having the eyes, simple eyes, or the ocelli. such as in the case of arthropods and other invertebrates. And many times what we see that there are certain organisms which have the dermal light receptors. And when we talk about certain homeotherms, that is the which have the those very organisms are the highly developed organisms which can maintain their own temperature inside the body, and they have the normal vision, and they do not respond to the ultraviolet or the infrared rays. So most of the homeotherms, they with the normal vision, they do not commonly respond to the ultraviolet or the infrared rays, since they have the retinas which are not stimulated by these very ultraviolet or the infrared rays. So that is why they do not show any kind of the activity in response to the ultraviolet or the infrared rays, and they are unable to distinguish between the different colors of the visible spectrum as well. There are certain animals which cannot properly distinguish between the different colors in the visible spectrum. For example, in the visible spectrum we do have the vibgyor, VIBGYOR, that is the violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red. So most of the higher animals, even they are unable to distinguish between the different colors of the visible spectrum, such as we do have the dogs, cats, hamsters, opossums. They are color blind, so that is they are not able to distinguish between the colors. Whereas we do have the certain horned cattle, that is horned cattle जिनके सींग होते हैं. So they cannot identify the red light, sorry, they cannot identify the red light. So horned cattle, they are unable to identify the red light, whereas there are certain animals such as horses, deer, sheep, pigs and squirrels, and they cannot distinguish close to red and green. That is, they are unable to distinguish between the colors which are close to red and the green colors. And when we talk about the primates, that is even higher organisms, and even we belong to that very group, and the primates, they can distinguish colors. So we do have the capability to distinguish each and every color present in the visible spectrum. But some insects such as honeybee, they can see ultraviolet radiation as well. So honeybees, they are able to see the ultraviolet radiations as well. So this is some of the interesting facts about the light. But one by one we shall be discussing the effect of the light on the animals. For example, light has its effect on the protoplasm. Light has its effect on the metabolism, on pigmentation, on animal movements, the photoperiodism and the biological clock. It has its effect on the reproduction, and if it has its effect on the development of the animals as well. So one by one we shall be talking about the effect of the light on animals. Now we shall be talking about the effect of the light on protoplasm. Many times what we see that the sun rays penetrate such covers and cause excitation, activation, ionization and heating up protoplasm of the different body cells. And many times ultraviolet rays are known to cause mutational changes in the DNA of various organisms. So many a times the light plays an important role or plays a detrimental role on the protoplasm by excitation, activation, ionization and heating of the protoplasm, and thus causing the mutational changes as well. So when we talk about the effect of the light on metabolism, the metabolic rate of different animals is greatly influenced by the light. The increased intensity of the light results in an increased enzymatic activity and the general metabolic rate and solubility of the salts and minerals, so in which are present in the protoplasm. And when we talk about the solubility of the gases, it however decreases with high intensity of the gases. So when the gas intensity of the light is high, the solubility of the gases decrease, and cave dwelling animals are found to be sluggish in their habits, and also they have the slower rate of the metabolism. So on one hand, when the intensity of the light increases, there is high enzymatic activity. I just be using the highlighter. There is high enzymatic activity, increase in the general metabolic rate, increase in the solubility of the salts and minerals. But on the other hand, the solubility of the gases decreases with high light intensity, and the movement of the animals decreases when the light intensity is high, and mostly in the with the light, and mostly in the case of the cave-dwelling animals, which are found to be sluggish in their habits, and they also contain slower rate of the metabolism. Now we shall be talking about the effect of the light on pigmentation. And light influences pigmentation in the case of animals. And the cave animals lack skin pigments, and mostly we see in the case of the certain cave dwelling animals, and mostly in the case of the you can say cave dwelling animals in the case of the sea, where in those very animals which are living in the extreme darkness, they don't have the pigments on their skin, or the pigments are very less. So light intensity is directly proportional to the pigmentation of the skin. It means that those very animals which are more exposed to the light, they have the dark pigmentation, whereas those very animals which are least, you can say, exposed to the light, they have the light pigmentation, or they may be lacking the pigmentation altogether. So darkly pigmented skin of the human beings which inhabit the tropics also indicate the effect of the sunlight on the skin pigmentation. And secondly, the skin pigment synthesis is dependent on the sunlight as well. So light also determines the characteristic pattern of the pigments of the different animals which serve the animals in the sexual dimorphism and productive coloration. So light has a role in the formation of pigments, and these very pigments in turn serve the animals in the sexual dimorphism and protective coloration. Animals that dwell in the depths of the ocean, where the environment is monotonous, that is altogether similar, though pigmentation do not show patterns in their coloration. Next we shall be dealing the effect of the light on the animal movements. Do animal have the effect, this very light has the effect on the animal movements? The influence of the light on the movement of the animals, it is evident in mostly in the case of the lower animals. For example, the oriented locomotory movement towards or away from the source of the light, we call it as the phototaxis. So this is the taxic movement. So when we talk about the taxic movement, it is the oriented locomotory movement towards or away from the source of the light. So when we talk about this very taxic movement, it can be clinotaxis, it can be tropotaxis. And secondly, we do have the positively phototactic animals, such as we do have the euglena, we do have the ranatra. They move towards the source of the light. So those very animals which move towards the source of the light, we call them as the positively phototactic, whereas those which move away from the source of the light, we call them as the negative phototactic animals. Such as planarians, they are the negatively phototactic animals. So negatively phototactic animals are planarians, earthworms, slugs, copepods, siphonophores. They move away from the source of the light, and that is why they are called as the negatively phototropic animals. Now there is another term which we call it as the tropism. Now when we say the light directed growth mechanism, that is when we say the growth which is because of the light, we call it as the tropism. So it occurs in the sessile animals, mostly if we talk about the animals. And the phototropism, they include the responsive movements of some body parts of some active animals to the light stimulus. such as the movement of flagellum of the euglena. When we talk about the movement of the flagellum of the euglena towards the light, and the movement of the polyps of many coelentrates. So this is tropism, that is the responsive movement of some body parts of some active animals towards the light stimulus. So this is tropism. And the velocity of the speed of the movement of certain animals is also regulated by the light. And it has been observed that animals, when responding to the light, reduce their velocity of the movement, and these movements which are non-directional, they are called as the kinesis. Now there is another term which is called as the kinesis. And what is this very kinesis? And when the animals respond to the light, reduce their velocity of the movement, and these movements which are non-directional, that is there is non-directional movement, we call it as the photokinesis, which can be orthokinesis or which can be clinokinesis. So in the orthokinesis, speed of the movement depends upon the stimulus intensity, whereas in the clinokinesis, rate of the turning depends upon the stimulus intensity. So here it is the turning moment, here it is the speed of the movement. When we talk about the photokinesis, it may be a change in the linear velocity. When there is a change in the linear velocity, it is rheokinesis. So we use the term rheokinesis. Or in the direction of the turning, when it is the turning direction, it is called as the clinokinesis. So during photokinesis, when only a part of the body of an animal deviates away from the source of the light, the reaction is termed as the photoclinokinesis. So, when during the photokinesis, when only a part of the body of an animal it deviates from the source of the light, this reaction is called as the photoclinokinesis. And the larva of the musca, that is the simple housefly, Musca domestica, it shows movements when the animals are confronted with two lights of equal brightness. They move towards or away to a position that is distanced between the two lights. So they move in a position which is towards or away from the position, or you can say distanced in between the two lights. So this is called as the phototropotaxis. Phototropotaxis, wherein the stimulus spatial comparisons of the stimulus samples taken by the separate sensor, and mostly it is seen in the case of the Musca family. And when we call it as the attraction of the males towards the flash of the female, it is called as the telotaxis. So attraction of the males towards the flash of the female, it is the telotaxis. And secondly, the movement of the animals at a constant angle toward the source of the light, or you can say the movement of the animals at a constant angle toward the source of the light, it is called light compass reaction or the celestial orientation. Then we do have the phototropism. Phototropism is one of the important, you can say, topics which needs to be elaborated at length, but under which we study the rhythms. Rhythms are because of the photoperiod, this light. We do have the period or the cycles, we do have the photoperiodism, we do have the circadian rhythms, we do have the circatidal rhythms, we do have the circalunar rhythms, we do have the circannular rhythms, we do have the clocks, that is the biological clocks, and we do have the zappers. So it is the light which plays an important role in the formation or in the performance of the rhythms, or in the photoperiodism, or in the annual cycles, or the you can say daily cycles, or the biological clocks which develop inside the animals. It is because of the light. So light plays an important role in all these very activities as well. This topic we shall be dealing as an independent topic. Now we shall be talking about the effect of the light on the reproduction. Photoperiods, they control breeding activities in animals, and on the basis of which the animals can be categorized as the short day animals, long day animals and day neutral animals. When we talk about the short day animals, these very animals breed during the short photoperiods or decreasing day length of autumn, and they are in anestrus. They are anestrus, that is not in estrus phase, in spring and summer, and they are estrus in the fall and winter. So such animals, the sheeps, goat, deer, they belong to this very category, that is the short day animals. Then we do have the long day animals which breed during the longer photoperiods and during the spring. So we do have the horses, that is this very case, we do have the horses, hamsters, groundhogs, mink, starling, turkeys, which are the long day breeders, and we call them as the long day animals. Then we do have the day neutral animals. So animals which are not, wherein the reproduction is not related to the length of the day and the night, such animals are categorized as the day neutral animals, such as we do have the rabbits, we do have the squirrels, we do have the guinea pig, where the phase of the light does not play an important role in the reproduction. Then does this very light affects the migration in animals? Yes. The light has the effect on the migration of the animals in many cases. Birds migrate from the colder to the warmer places during winter, and they return to their homes during summer. So it means that to escape the harsh environmental conditions of the winter, they move towards the summer areas from their homes. And this very movement is controlled by changing day length during the autumn, that is the shorter photo periods, and the spring, that is the longer photo period. So it means when the autumn approaches, they start moving toward the areas which are warmer, and when the spring comes, they try to move towards back to their homes. So there are fishes like eels and salmon. They also show migration in response to the changing day length. There are many aquatic organisms. They also show vertical movements in response to the light. So there are different kinds of the animals which show migratory movements, or the migration in response to the decreasing length of the day and the night. So we do have the example of the wildebeest. Wildebeest. So they know that okay, summer is approaching. The area will not be suitable enough to have the grass, because that will lead to the scarcity of the rain and the grass. So they move towards the areas which are having the abundant grass, and on the basis of this very photo period, they show the movement. So similarly, there are many fishes which show many times the vertical movements as well. So there are fishes which move from the surface to the bottom in order to escape from the harsh um, intensity of the light. So they show diurnal migration as well, that is from the surface toward the bottom, and from the bottom toward the surface as well. So there are certain animals which show the migratory movements from the higher altitudes to the lower altitudes, or from the lower altitude to the higher altitudes, to escape the harsh environmental or the harsh, well, intensity of the light. So light also has the effect on activity. There are certain animals, such as we call them as the, on the basis of this very activity, we divide animals into diurnal, we do divide animals into the nocturnal, we do divide animals into the crepuscular or the auroral animals. So we do have these certain animals, we call them as the diurnal animals. Diurnal animals, they remain active during the day. For example, most birds, most mammals, butterflies, they are said to be diurnal. And the nocturnal animals which are active during the night, examples we do have the owl, bat, cockroaches, foxes, badgers, snails, hedgehogs. They mostly belong to the group that is the nocturnal animals, because they are not able to tolerate the high intensity of the light. So we do have the auroral animals as well, that is the animals which remain active at dawn, that is the early morning hours or the early hours of the day. We do have the example in the form of the babalcus. Then we do have the animals, we call them as the vesperal, which remain active during the dusk, that is the late hours of the day. We do have the example such as the rabbit. And then we use a term, common term, that is a crepuscular animals. Animals which are active primarily during the twilight, that is the periods of the dawn and the dusk, such as we do have the lion, American cockwood. So those very animals which are said to be active during the low intensity of the light, such as the we do have the auroral and the vesperal. We use a common term, that is a crepuscular, for these very animals. The effect of the light on the aquatic systems. Yes, aquatic ecosystem, this very light intensity plays a very important role in the aquatic ecosystems. And we divide the aquatic ecosystems into different zones or different strata on the basis of the penetration of the light. So we do have the photic zone up to which the light penetrates, that is up to 200 meter, up to which the light penetrates easily, and we call this very zone as the photic zone. And the rest of the zone below 2000 meter, below, we call it as the aphotic zone. And many times this very in between the photic and the aphotic zone, we also have the zone which we call it as the dysphotic zone. Many of the books have written the dysphotic zone. So in between the photic and the aphotic zone, we do have the dysphotic zone as well. So the photic zone up to 200 meter and the aphotic zone below 200 meter, or in between transition, there is another zone which we call it as dysphotic zone, which has the lower intensity of the light. So the light has an important role in the aquatic ecosystems, because it is the light which enhances the photosynthetic activity in the case of the aquatic plants, or in the case of the planktons which are on this present on the surface of the water bodies. So we have discussed this in detail in the lake zonation, or the zonation of the marine environment, that you should go through my earlier lecture, that is the zonation of the lakes. And this is all for today, and the next time we shall be dealing with the effect of the light on the plants as well in a separate lecture. So I hope that you are now well aware about the intensity of the light or its effect of the intensity of the light on the animals. And next time we shall be dealing with the other physicochemical or the environmental factor which plays an important role, or has the effect on the animals. Next time we shall be dealing with the temperature. Thank you very much.